back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, February 10th. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into all that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we are going to start off the show. We are, of course, going to recap the Super Bowl. The Eagles winning 40-22 and capturing their second Super Bowl championship in franchise history. So we will get into all the specifics of that. We will talk about Jalen Hurts in the second part of the show winning Super Bowl MVP. We'll talk about where the Chiefs go from here. We'll get into talking about who are the favorites to go to the Super Bowl next year, the Super Bowl odds for the 2025-2026 season, and then just my final thoughts on this season as a whole, as the NFL season has now come to a close. And we'll just get into, kind of an overview of the season, some of the best moments, things like that. So let's dive into the Super Bowl, shall we? So the Eagles win 40-22, and I thought this was going to be a very good game. Going in, I said how, the Eagles may have more talent here, but I thought the Chiefs were destined for the three-peat. But that was not the case here. I quickly realized early on in this game that it was not looking good for the Chiefs. And it got to 10-0, and I immediately thought, okay, well, the Chiefs have been in this spot before where they're trailing by 10 and Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have come back from deficits like this before. In all three of Mahomes' previous Super Bowl victories, he's come back from 10-point deficits. So I was thinking, all right, maybe it'll happen again. And then all of a sudden, Cooper DeJean has that pick six. And at that point, I thought he could have won Super Bowl MVP. And it was his birthday. It was him and Saquon's birthday. Once that pick six happened, it really started to settle in that, yeah, I don't think the Chiefs are coming back from this. And the Chiefs, going into the second half and even into the third quarter, they had they were under 50 yards of total offense. They could not get the ball past midfield. They couldn't even get to midfield. This Eagles defense played out of their minds yesterday. And the crazy thing is, they did not blitz Mahomes once. And they were able to get to him. And I had my concerns about the offensive line going into this game for Kansas City. Because, you had some guys playing out of position. Joe Thuney was playing one of the tackle positions. That concerned me because we've seen a Super Bowl where the Chiefs, their offensive line was shaky going in, and it got exposed against the Buccaneers. This was worse than that. That was probably the worst game I've ever seen Patrick Mahomes play. Under pressure all night. The 2 interceptions were bad. You thought maybe they were getting the ball at coming out of the second half. You thought, they get the ball after the pick six. Maybe you can go down the field and get some points and then come out in the second half and, do a double dip. And then all of a sudden you're kind of back. You're back in this game, but that did not happen because then Mahomes threw another pick, and that led to an A.J. Brown touchdown, and it was 24-0 at the half. And I never thought they were going to come back. And early on, Mahomes was missing throws. Kelsey, I thought, dropped the pass, but Mahomes didn't throw it great there. There was another one where he just threw it at Kelsey's feet. And then also DeAndre Hopkins is wide open, and he drops it. So not only do I think the better team won in this spot, I just think the more prepared team won in this spot too. I think the Chiefs came out flat. But also, you really take a look at these rosters, and we did do that last week. But the Eagles just have better players. I mean, offensively, you compare Mahomes' supporting cast to Jalen Hurts' supporting cast, I mean, the Eagles blow the Chiefs out of the water there. The Chiefs couldn't run the ball last night either, which I didn't really talk about last week. But I had a feeling that it was going to be a problem running the ball in this game. The Chiefs were going to have to win it. I mean, of course, they were going to be throwing it more. But I thought that the running game was going to struggle. Kareem Hunt was solid for them since he came back, played well for them. But Isaiah Pacheco has not been the same player coming back from his injury. And you're going up against this Eagles defense. I knew that running the ball was going to be a problem there. And the only thing that the Chiefs really did well last night was stop Saquon Barkley. Saquon was really a non-factor in this game. There was a couple times where it looked like he was going to break one, but it didn't happen. The Chiefs really keyed in on him and said, all right, Jalen Hurts, beat us with your arm. And he did that. And the Eagles, they didn't play conservative at certain points. Even when they were up big, that touchdown to Devontae Smith, they went for the Chiefs' throat. And they shut him out. And I know the Chiefs, they scored, a couple of touchdowns at the end to, kind of narrow the gap a little bit. But the score was worse than what it ended up being. Those two Xavier Worthy touchdowns, it's empty calories. Now, I thought, they were great plays. Worthy on the second touchdown, he basically just runs past the Eagles secondary. That was a great play by him. It's not like these were, lollipop touchdowns. I mean, these were, and the first one, Mahomes is, scrambling around, and, he throws it on the run to Worthy, and Worthy makes a nice catch that was the first touchdown. So, I mean, it's not like they were layups, but it was too little too late. And, Mahomes turned the ball over 3 times, the 2 interceptions, and then there was the fumble where, he was looking to just throw it up and hope something could happen, and, he ends up getting stripped, and the Eagles recover. That was the worst game I've ever seen him play. But give credit to the Eagles. This is a very good football team. And I said going into the season that they were going to be the team that we saw a couple years ago because of the additions that they made, how they fixed the defense, new coordinators, Saquon Barkley. This team was going to bounce back after the collapse from last year. It didn't get off to a great start. You had people chanting "Fire Sirianni" after the Browns win. Well, how do you feel about him now? 2 Super Bowl appearances in 3 years, and they got it done this time. He's not going anywhere. Now, they're going to lose Kellen Moore. We're going to talk about this week, but Kellen Moore is now going to be the head coach of the Saints. He ended up taking that job. But they still have all that talent there. And the other thing, too, is with Jalen Hurts, they asked him after the game. Aaron Andrews asked him after the game, talking about the confetti because, he had, as a screensaver, when they lost the Super Bowl to the Chiefs a couple years ago, and, he was walking off the field, and, the confetti's coming down. And before the game, Peter Schrager was saying on the Fox pregame that, Jalen Hurts made a speech, and, it was like their best team, one of their best team meetings of the season. And Jalen Hurts had a speech, and Jalen Hurts is usually a soft-spoken guy, but the Eagles were really motivated to get revenge on the Chiefs for a couple years ago, their loss to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And they did more than just that. This was pure domination. So, honestly, I don't know if we're ever going to see a three-peat. Because it's already hard enough to win one Super Bowl, and then you win back-to-back. But trying to do three, I mean, the Packers are technically the only team to do it, but that was before the merger. But I don't know if we're ever going to see it. But yeah, I was hoping for a better game. And you guys know me. Like, I say it a lot of times. Like, oh, I think this is going to be a good game. And then it ends up not being a good game. This was probably one of the worst Super Bowls I've ever watched. Because it was pure domination. I think this was worse. This was definitely worse than the Tampa Super Bowl. But not only that, I'll go as far as to say that this game, I have never seen a team get dominated like this. I think this was worse than what the Legion of Boom did to Peyton Manning in 2013. Because at least, again, it's not saying much, but the Broncos, at times, they got the ball on the opposing team's side. It's just, yeah, they didn't get any points out of it, but they were at least able to move the ball and get someone into enemy territory. The Chiefs couldn't do anything for 3/4 of the game. By the time they got past midfield, it was almost the fourth quarter. So, I really do believe that. Now, you look at the Broncos offense from 2013 and you compare it to this Chiefs offense, it's not comparable. The Broncos were much better on offense. But the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, who is the best quarterback in the NFL right now. And that he's been to Super Bowls before, and he's won 3. He's been to 4, he's won 3, and they just couldn't do anything. But congratulations to the Eagles. This is coming from a Giant fan. It is well-deserved. They're a well-run organization. And yeah, were they, the best team all year going into the playoffs? I mean, they we talked about the Lions and, the Chiefs and the Ravens and all these teams. The Eagles kind of like flew under the radar a little bit. But, when they started beating teams like the Ravens, Saquon had, that big game against the Rams, the Eagles started to get put on notice. And you saw, once the defense started to gel, it's like, yeah, this team is going to be dangerous come postseason time. This team could go all the way. And they did, and they won it. And they got revenge on the Chiefs. So props to them. And, they got a lot of young players on this team, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Zach Bond, free agent signing, under the radar signing. I mean, he put together a great season. Brandon Graham made his presence felt last night, coming back from the torn triceps. I mean, it was an overall great performance for the Eagles. I mean, there was a pick that Hurts threw early on. You thought maybe that was going to lead to some momentum for the Chiefs. It never did. It never did. Eagles only turned the ball over one time in the postseason, and it was last night. But yeah, props to them. And we're going to talk more about this game as we move along here. We'll talk about Jalen Hurts now when we come back from our first break. We'll talk about his performance last night. And he won Super Bowl MVP, so we'll get into all that when we come back. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing Illusion, shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about Jalen Hurts winning Super Bowl MVP and break down his performance yesterday. And he was solid. And you could tell early on that he was locked in. He hits A.J. Brown on that 4th and 2 or 4th and 3 down the sideline. Now, it got called back for offensive PI, which is maybe a little bit of a ticky-tacky call, but I think it still ultimately was the right call. And then he did bounce back after the interception, because there was that interception early on. It was picked off by Brian Cook, but it didn't matter. He still put together a good game, a good performance. He hits Devontae Smith, which was the dagger. I mean, the Fox broadcast has a job to do. They never guaranteed that, yeah, the Eagles won this game. Because, you still got to say, hey, the Chiefs, you never know. But I was just sitting there going, guys, come on now. The game's over. The game is over. There is no chance that the Chiefs are coming back. They have zero chance. But, I mean, was Jalen Hurts historically great last night? No, but he didn't have to be. And this was good for him because I talked about this last week. I think he's one of the more highly criticized quarterbacks or scrutinized quarterbacks in the NFL, because it's just, he has those games where he doesn't throw for a ton of yards, and, people call him maybe a handoff merchant because, you're just handing the ball off to Saquon, and, Saquon has these huge games. But like I said last week, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If the running game's working, keep handing it off. And guess what? Saquon is not the reason that the Eagles won this game last night. Saquon was really a non-factor. Now, I don't want to put a damper on this, but I do think that the defense as a whole should have got Super Bowl MVP. Because I said at one point, I thought Cooper DeJean should have got it. Then, Josh Sweat had a couple of sacks. Milton Williams had a couple of sacks in this game as well. And I think he had the forced fumble late in the game. I just want to go to the box score really quick. So you look at the Eagles' defense. So, yeah, Milton Williams had 2 sacks. And he had the forced fumble. Cooper DeJean had the pick 6. And then you also had Josh Sweat as well. I don't know why I can't find him on here. Oh, here he is. 2.5 sacks he had. The Eagles' defense as a whole had 6 sacks, 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble, and, one of the interceptions was a pick 6. Now, Jalen Hurts on the night, 17 of 22, 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. And the interception was early on. But Hurts was solid. He also did have 72 yards on the ground. He still ended up being the leading rusher in the Super Bowl for the Eagles. Saquon only had 57 yards on the ground. They gave the ball to him 25 times. But yeah, Hurts had 72 yards on the ground in the rushing touchdown. It was the tush-push touchdown early on. So I'm not saying that I'm outraged by it, but I do think that the Eagles' defense probably deserved it more. But you're not going to give it to the whole defense. You got to give it to somebody. And, you could say, hey, give it to Milton Williams. Give it to Cooper DeJean. Give it to Josh Sweat. But I get it. Not only is the MVP a quarterback award, but the Super Bowl MVP is also a quarterback award. Depending on, what year we're talking here. Because Cooper Kupp was the last player, the last non-quarterback to win Super Bowl MVP. And I remember I went over that last year, and I said it was Julian Edelman, but I forgot about Kupp. I was thinking Stafford won it, but no, Kupp ended up winning that. But yeah, this is usually a quarterback award. And when the Seahawks and the Broncos won it, the no-fly zone and Legion of Boom, Malcolm Smith won that award for the Seahawks because he had the pick 6 off of Peyton Manning. And then Von Miller, of course, won the Super Bowl MVP for Super Bowl 50. And I mean, he had an unbelievable performance too. You know, he had the strip sack of Cam Newton. He had two. Well, he had two of them. Well, the two fumbles. And I don't think the second one was a sack, but he knocked the ball out of Cam Newton's hands. But Von Miller was a one-man wrecking crew in that Super Bowl. But yeah, I think you could have given it to a defensive player. But yeah, Jalen Hurts was solid. He was. He was locked in for this game, and that's 2 Super Bowls now against the Chiefs where he has come up big. And there's a bigger conversation to be had about him. Where does he rank now amongst the top quarterbacks in the league? And my friend and I were talking about this the night before the Super Bowl. Like, yeah, what happens if the Eagles win this Super Bowl? Where do we rank Hurts? And I did bring up the fact that, all right, well, if Hurts has a good game, you know, you got to put him, you know, in the top 5, right? Well, actually, I also talked about, well, if he has a bad game, well, you know, we're not going to have any kind of conversation. But he's got to contribute to this victory, and he did do that. But was he, like, spectacular? Was he, you know, historically great? Like I said, no. But like I said in the open, he didn't have to be. He didn't have to be. The Eagles' defense put them in great field position. Well, the pick six, you know, they didn't have to do anything. But then the Zach Bond interception, that led to an A.J. Brown touchdown. And then, of course, you know, you had the fumble later in the game as well. But, you know, the Eagles, they went for the kill shot. Hurts connected with Devontae Smith. Hurts was efficient. You know, if it's not going to be the defense, yeah, you give it to the quarterback. The quarterback played well. It's not like Jimmy Garoppolo where, you know, in that NFC Championship game when Garoppolo, you know, threw like, what, completed 3 passes in the game? No. Hurts contributed to this game a lot more. And, you know, they had to win it through the air because the Chiefs, they held down Saquon Barkley. And I figured that Jalen Hurts was going to have a good game here. If the Eagles were to win, Jalen Hurts is going to have to make plays. And Jalen Hurts did make plays in this game. Not just with his legs, but with his arm too. Now, the Eagles were kind of comfortable. They were on cruise control pretty much this whole game because, you know, the Chiefs just could not move the ball. And Mahomes threw 2 picks that helped him out. But Jalen Hurts still played a good game. And for him, for the Eagles to bounce back after what happened last year, and then you lose the Super Bowl the year before that, I mean, this is going to be a very good team for a long time if they can keep this core together. Now, Brandon Graham's probably going to retire, but you still got these young players on the defensive line, in the secondary. You know, and you got A.J. Brown, you got Devontae Smith, you got Saquon, you have this offensive line. I mean, Kellen Moore's going to leave, but I would imagine, you know, everybody else is going to stay, right? The Eagles can continue to win. Now, it's tough to repeat. It's tough to get to 3 straight Super Bowls. The Patriots did it. The Chiefs did it. But, you know, you look at the landscape of the NFC. I mean, the Eagles are going to be right there if they keep this group together. But back to what I was saying about Hurts. It's tough right now because I still think Josh Allen's a better quarterback. I still think Lamar Jackson's a better quarterback. I mean, I could argue Joe Burrow's a better quarterback. But here's the thing. We also measure quarterbacks on what they do in the big games. And Jalen Hurts has been to 2 Super Bowls. Joe Burrow's been to 1. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have not been to a Super Bowl yet. Jalen Hurts has a Super Bowl now. And he knocked off Patrick Mahomes. And he is now the 3rd guy to knock off Mahomes in the playoffs. He joins an elite class. Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, and now Jalen Hurts. And now Jalen Hurts has a Super Bowl. Tom Brady, when he beat Mahomes in the Super Bowl. and he beat Mahomes in the AFC Championship game and then went on to win the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow beat him, and Joe Burrow ended up losing in his Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts won. Now, that game was an overall team win. But Jalen Hurts contributed to that win. He did. When the Eagles got turnovers, the offense turned it into points. And that is what we saw in the championship game against the Commanders. The Eagles were not going to be the team where, you get the turnover and you don't turn it into anything. They made the Chiefs pay. And Jalen Hurts made them pay. And, yeah, I mean, put respect on his name now. Now, I think I still had him as a top 10 quarterback, but, you look at his overall body of work from the regular season. I mean, did he have a great year? Numbers-wise, no. But you know what? He's part of a team that won 14 games. And the other thing about being a quarterback is, yeah, you're not putting up all these great stats, but also you manage the game right and you don't turn the ball over. And maybe early on in the season it was a bit of a problem with some of the games that they lost. But the Eagles went on this streak, and their only loss during that was against the Commanders in a game where Jalen Hurts got hurt. And then you get into the playoffs, and your first turnover of the playoffs is in the Super Bowl. But they ended up winning the turnover battle, the Eagles. I mean, it was very impressive what they were able to do. And they played... I mean, I'm not going to say I sat there and watched every Eagles game this year, but that was probably the best game they played. You could say, the championship game with the turnovers, but I think just overall they played, it wasn't a flawless game because, yeah, they turned the ball over once, but you got to say, in the biggest game, they were prepared for this game. They were motivated to win this game. And they got it done. And Jalen Hurts got it done. So, props to him to get this done. And, yeah, you can't really disrespect him today. You could try to spin it however you want, but at the end of the day, he's a Super Bowl champion. And was he the sole reason that the Eagles won this game? No. Like I said, the Eagles' defense, I think, is the real reason why they won the game. But Jalen Hurts had a good game. And Jalen Hurts also put the exclamation point on this game. He put his stamp on this game because they made sure to slam that door shut and make sure that, yeah, you're not coming back, Chiefs. It's not happening this year. So, yeah, Jalen Hurts is a Super Bowl MVP. And let's see how he follows it up next year. So, before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So, when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the Chiefs now. Chiefs side of things. Where do they go from here after this loss? So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to now talk about the Super Bowl from the Chiefs side of things now. So they have lost the Super Bowl. They have lost the chance to three-peat until they try to do it again. But, yeah, that was rough. That was probably the worst game I have ever seen Patrick Mahomes play. And there's been games where he has not played well. I mean, go back to his last Super Bowl loss against the Buccaneers. That wasn't great. Now, these Super Bowls were similar in the sense that offensive line wasn't great and Mahomes turned the ball over. But at least in that Super Bowl, the Chiefs moved the ball down the field. It's just when they got down near the goal line, they didn't score. In this Super Bowl, I mean, you had a couple of, long passes from Mahomes, and then, they scored quickly, but it was too little too late at that point. And it was too little too late in that Super Bowl, too. But, yeah, it just, from start to finish, the Chiefs just never got into a rhythm. Mahomes never got into a rhythm. And early on, he misses Kelsey on those two passes. We talked about this earlier, the DeAndre Hopkins drop. And DeAndre Hopkins has one, he's one of the best receivers of his era. And that's a pass that he makes 10 times out of 10. And he just didn't catch it. Now, was it the best throw? I mean, I guess not. But he should have caught that. And you could just tell early on. Like, I immediately just thought of the Tampa Super Bowl. Seeing Mahomes get sacked and, him not on the same page with his receivers. They're dropping passes. He's missing throws. He's getting sacked. I'm thinking, yeah, it was worse than the Tampa Super Bowl. It was. It was. Now, what do the Chiefs have to do? Well, I think they got to overhaul this offense. And I mean in terms of the skill position players. Because as much as, seeing Juju Smith-Schuster and Kareem Hunt come back to this team and contribute, and DeAndre Hopkins comes over and, he made plays for them and he was playing in the Super Bowl for the first time in his career, they need to get back to being that explosive offense that we saw when they first won the Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes. They need to get guys like Xavier Worthy. They need to get Rashee Rice back. I mean, I don't know if Rashee Rice would have made a huge difference in this game, but they probably could have used him last night. The Chiefs kind of got exposed in this game because all season long they were playing these close games, against the Raiders. And, the Chargers were a good team this year, don't get me wrong, but, they need to improve their team as well. Against the Panthers, you're playing a close game with them. There's just a lot of games this year that you look at and you're like, the Chiefs should be blowing this team out. And they finally went up against a team that said, yeah, we're not playing a close game with you. You're not in the same class as us. And that's exactly what happened. They got exposed last night. The offensive line, I did worry about going into the game. That got exposed. They couldn't run the ball. And you look at the weapons. I mean, outside of Xavier Worthy, Juju Smith-Schuster didn't really do anything. Travis Kelce really didn't do anything. DeAndre Hopkins didn't do anything. Look at the box score for the Chiefs. Now, Mahomes threw for 257 yards. Sorry, it's empty calories. Most of his yards came, towards the end of the third quarter and the fourth quarter. He had 2 interceptions in the game. The Chiefs ran the ball for 49 yards. You know who was their leading rusher? Patrick Mahomes, 25 yards. Kareem Hunt, 3 carries for 9 yards. Samaje Perine, 1 carry for 8 yards. Isaiah Pacheco, 3 carries for 7 yards. So their running backs combined, had 24 yards on the ground. Now, part of the problem was they were playing from behind. But still, even early on in the game, they could not run the football. And then you look at the box score for the receivers. Xavier Worthy was awesome. 8 receptions, 157 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Most of those, well, pretty much all of that came in the third quarter and the fourth quarter. Towards the end of the third quarter and the fourth quarter. But still, I mean, like I said, I know it's empty calories, but they weren't easy plays to make for Worthy. Kelsey, 4 receptions, 39 yards. DeAndre Hopkins, 2 receptions for 18 yards. He actually did have a touchdown in the game and also caught the 2-point conversion as well. Juju Smith-Schuster, 2 receptions for 16 yards. Marquise Brown, 2 receptions, 15 yards. Kareem Hunt, 1 reception, 5 yards. Pacheco, the same thing. Noah Gray, 1 reception for 2 yards. This is not going to do it. And Travis Kelce, I said last year I didn't think he was washed because he did have a good postseason, but I'm starting to think that, yeah, he's not the same player. He's not. This year, didn't have, the receiving yards that we're accustomed to seeing. He had around 800, a little over 800, which, I mean, it's not bad, but it's not what we're accustomed to seeing when it comes to Travis Kelce. But I don't think he's the same guy. He's not the guy that can help Mahomes take over this game. And like I said, I think, yeah, they missed Rashee Rice last night, but I don't know if he would have made a difference either way. Well, he probably wouldn't have made a difference. They need to get more talent on the offensive side of the ball. They need to improve their receiving core. They need to improve this running game. And they got to do what they did, a few years ago after the Tampa Super Bowl. Fix the offensive line. So it does seem like a lot. And it does seem like it's easier said than done. Then, yeah, all right, go out there and overhaul this offense, like I said. But I think that's what they're going to have to do. Figure it out. And I think they will. I don't think that, after the Super Bowl, yeah, the Chiefs, they're done. Their window's closed. No. Andy Reid's not going anywhere, and Patrick Mahomes is not going anywhere. Now, Travis Kelce, I think will be the first one to go between him and Andy Reid. I mean, Mahomes is going to be a Chief his whole career. But then again, we've seen quarterbacks leave and go elsewhere towards the end of their careers. But I'm anticipating Mahomes is going to be a Chief his whole career. So he's not going to go anywhere. Andy Reid's sticking around. Kelsey's, I think, going to stick around. But Kelsey's not the same player. They need to revamp this offense. And how are they going to do that? Well, there's receivers available. Maybe they go out and they trade for Cooper Kupp. Maybe they go out and get Devontae Adams. Now, those guys, I mean, Devontae has a bigger contract than Cooper Kupp, I believe, but they got to get more dynamic. Now I sound like I'm talking about the Steelers. They need to get more guys like Xavier Worthy in this offense. Because he was a one-man show last night. I mean, these veterans that they brought back and brought in, yeah, they helped them get to a Super Bowl. But they get to the Super Bowl, and you're playing against this Eagles defense that's young and fast and flying all over the field. And they, other than Worthy, I mean, they got a bunch of old guys. I'm sorry. They gotta get younger. And getting Rashee Rice back is gonna help. But I know I love how I said that, but then again I was talking about them getting Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp, but you guys know what I mean. And I think the other thing too is, like I said, the offensive line. But the Chiefs just did not look. The Eagles were the better team, and I don't want to take away. I don't want to take away from the fact that they were just the better team there. But I just also think the Chiefs were not prepared for this game. They just didn't look like it. They came out flat. Like the last Super Bowl that they played against the Eagles scored, and then the Chiefs scored immediately after that. It's just this game, it's just they started off slow. And they just never recovered. And just the Eagles just got after Mahomes. That was brutal to watch. But you know what? They got a Hall of Fame coach, Hall of Fame quarterback. They're going to be back. They're going to win another Super Bowl at some point. But they got exposed last night. They did. And, for people saying, the refs didn't help out the Chiefs last night, that's what happens. No, the better team won. So let me get this straight. So when Mahomes wins, we give the refs all the credit. But then when he loses, the refs weren't on his side. Because early on, already people were complaining. The offensive pass interference. Oh, here we go again. The Chiefs are getting the calls again. What are you gonna say now? You know what? You talk about, the refs didn't help him out this time. You know what? Here's the thing. The AFC is a cupcake conference. Because the Chiefs are able to get by Lamar Jackson. They're able to get past Josh Allen. They get past all these teams every single year. That's why they're always in the AFC Championship game. That's why they're always in the Super Bowl. The AFC is a weak conference. So, and I think the teams are going to be better next year. But they're a weak conference. I mean, then you could look over at the NFC. I mean, you could say, well, look at, the NFC. Well, yeah. But, the Eagles didn't make it to the Super Bowl last year. The Chiefs are in the AFC Championship game and the Super Bowl basically every year. Because they own the teams in the AFC. They own them. That's why they make these deep playoff runs every year. So these other teams, you saw what the Eagles did. If you want to be that team, show it next year. The Chiefs only lost 2 games this year, to the Bills and the Broncos, which didn't really count because they rested their starters. But look at what the Eagles did. They got the blueprint. So, I don't know. I just think it's the whole refs thing. Like, I get it. I really do. But are we really just at that point where we can't even, some people just can't even admit, like, you know what, Patrick Mahomes is great. The Chiefs are great. But there's a lot of other things that I do want to talk about this week, regarding their dynasty, regarding Mahomes individually, because I do think that his legacy took a massive hit last night. I really do. Because we have now seen 2 Super Bowls. The 2 Super Bowls that Patrick Mahomes has lost. Not only did he lose them, but he got blown out. That is not good. And that is a credit to, the opposition. But also, you got to play better. And he owned up to it. He sent out that tweet after the game. He said that, to Chiefs Kingdom, he let him down. But, yeah, it's not good. Not good. And we'll talk about his legacy this week. But, yeah, it's just that took a hit last night. So we're going to take our next break now. When we come back, we will, take a look at the Super Bowl odds for next year. Who has the best odds to get to the Super Bowl next year? So, it's never too early to do that. We did the same thing last year after the Super Bowl, so we're going to get into all that when we come back. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we are going to take a look at the teams with the best odds to make the Super Bowl next year. So I guess we'll take a look at DraftKings. So the Eagles have the best odds right now. They are at plus 600. The Chiefs are at plus 700. The Bills are at plus 700. And the Ravens are also at plus 700. Lions are at plus 1,000. The 49ers are at plus 1,600. Commanders and Packers are plus 1,800. The Bengals are plus 2,000. The Chargers and the Rams are both plus 2,800, so both LA teams. Texans are plus 3,000. The Buccaneers and the Broncos have the same odds, plus 3,500. The Vikings and the Bears are both plus 4,000. That's interesting that they both have the same odds. You got 5 teams at plus 6,500. The Seahawks, the Steelers, the Dolphins, the Cowboys, and the Falcons. And I'm not really going to go any further than that. But, yeah, so let's take a look at the teams that have the best odds. So you got the Eagles right now, according to DraftKings. They have the best odds. Then you got the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, the Lions, 49ers. Look, the Eagles next year, I mean, you figure, everyone's coming back, pretty much. Other than Kellen Moore, everybody is going to be back next year. And you got this young defense with the 2 young corners and, on the defensive line. I think Zach Bond was only a 1-year deal, but, you figure they're going to try to bring him back, right? Unless he's going to get a big payday, because I think he was only brought in on a 1-year deal. But you figure you're going to have everybody back. You got this incredible supporting cast for Jalen Hurts on offense. They're going to be right there next year. And the Chiefs, the same thing. I expect them to be in the AFC Championship game again next year because that's just what happens. And now they're going to be motivated because of how they were embarrassed in the Super Bowl. But if you remember, when they got embarrassed by Tampa, they didn't make it back to the Super Bowl the following year. They ended up losing in the championship game. So maybe we see a similar trend. Maybe we see them lose in the championship game next year, and then the following year, they win 2 Super Bowls in a row again. I know someone probably wants to, jump through the screen and grab me and say, no, that's it. The Chiefs are done. But the Chiefs, you figure, are going to be in the thick of it next year. And I think that, look, we just talked about it in the last segment. They need to revamp this offense. I think that's probably a better word to use as opposed to overhaul, because overhaul means just you got to tear it down and start from scratch again. No, you gotta revamp it. Revamp is probably a better term to use. And look, you got the draft coming up, free agency. There's things they could do. Patrick Mahomes is not making that much money compared to the higher paid quarterbacks. He's not the highest paid quarterback in the league. He took, how his deal is set up is so the Chiefs can go out and continue to add talent. And maybe he restructures his deal again. They're gonna have to revamp that offense. They're gonna have to do that. The Bills and the Ravens, look, you got 2 MVPs, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. The Bills, they gotta improve their team as well. I think similar to the Chiefs. I say this for a lot of teams. There's receivers available. I think you need to add another weapon, and I think you need to continue to, strengthen your defense. And it's, you think to yourself, how would these other teams have fared against the Eagles last night? Honestly, I think the Bills, it could have been similar. With the Ravens, it probably would have been a tighter game. But we saw the Eagles go into Baltimore and beat the Ravens. But I don't think they would have. I don't think they would have killed the Ravens like they killed the Chiefs last night. But yeah, no, for those 2 teams, the Ravens, look, their defense struggled early on this year, but they kind of turned it around. Again, they're another team where I think they could add another weapon, another pass catcher. I like what Rashad Bateman did this year. Zay Flowers, they were missing in the postseason. But I think you need at least one more weapon. And, you still got Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. You got two good tight ends. You got Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry will still have a good year next year. Maybe it's not going to be to the same level as what he did this year, but he's gonna be solid. And then after that, you got the Lions. I am a little worried about the Lions going into next year just because of the guys that have left the building now on their coaching staff. Now, how is Dan Campbell going to rebuild this coaching staff? Now, the talent is all there. None of the talent left. You're going to get Aiden Hutchinson back next year. The defense is going to be healthy again. But it's just, how is the coaching going to be? Because, I go back to, after the Falcons lost their Super Bowl, right, to the Patriots. They lost Kyle Shanahan. He goes to San Francisco. And Matt Ryan's coming off of an MVP year. Steve Sarkisian comes in. And, the Falcons' offense isn't exactly the same. But I don't know. I mean, that's just one example. That's what I thought about. You lose this young offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson, who's one of the best play callers in the league. Now he's going to be within your division, staying in your division, going to the Bears. Now how is the offense going to take a step back now? We'll have to see. But, I mean, the Lions have the talent. And you know what? They really have turned things around there in Detroit. So I think they'll figure it out. But, I'm a little worried about it. But I could also look at it and say, hey, I thought this year was going to be the year for the Lions. It looked like everything was set up for them. You got the 1 seed, home field advantage, and you get to the playoffs, and the Commanders just dominated. The Lions' defense had no answers for Jaden Daniels. And now you lost a lot of the guys on your coaching staff. Like I said, how is that going to impact the team? I mean, that concerns me a little bit. I think they still have the window open, but I'm concerned. 49ers, look, this is one of those throw this year out the window years. Throw it out the window. Because they had a ton of injuries. And I think a healthy 49ers squad next year, they're going to be back near the top. Now, another thing that we'll talk about this week is that supposedly Deebo Samuel wants out. So they could be trading him this offseason. And I guess you kind of look at that and you say it's only a matter of time. It was only a matter of time because they do got young receivers. They got Ricky Pearsall on a rookie deal. Jawan Jennings, he's taken on a bigger role these last couple of years. And, he had some big games this year. You got Brandon Ayuk coming back. And Deebo had a rough year. So, yeah, maybe it's wise for them to move off of him. But, yeah, if you could get guys back healthy, McCaffrey comes back healthy, Ayuk, Purdy got banged up at the end of the year, the defense, Bosa was banged up. These guys all come back healthy next year. This 49ers team could still be good. And, we'll see what they end up doing with Brock Purdy, how they handle his contract situation. Because I would not pay Brock Purdy $60 million. I just wouldn't do it. But maybe they could work something out. And then you got the Commanders. The Packers are plus 1,800. Look, the Packers, I was disappointed with them. And it's funny, the Packers, they probably played the best game against the Eagles in the playoffs. It's just their offense could not do anything. Well, shouldn't say that. Their passing game could not do anything. Josh Jacobs had a good game. But Jordan Love was not great. And there was really no receiver that you could depend on in that game. It's just, Christian Watson was already hurt. Romeo Doubs got hurt. Jaden Reed got hurt. And they were using their fifth and sixth string guys, and it's just and Jordan Love also just was not healthy the whole year. So I'm looking for them to bounce back. But their defense was better this year. They got to, again, similar to a lot of the teams we talked about, they have to go out and get another receiver. They need to get a difference maker, because I thought going into the year that one of these guys was going to step up. They were going to take that next step, and they were going to be better, but it just never happened. It never happened. The Commanders, you figure they're going to be better next year. I mean, Jane Daniels, what he was able to do his rookie season, it was unbelievable. People talking about it as arguably the best rookie season a quarterback's ever had. I mean, he got all the way to the championship game, and this was a team that won, 4 games last year? What a turnaround. And you only think they're going to get better. And then you got the Bengals at plus 2,000. I think they should have a little bit better odds. But we'll have to see what happens with T. Higgins, how they work out the contracts. And they got to fix this defense too. But I'm not going to go through every single team. But let me know what you guys think about the teams with the best odds to get to the Super Bowl next year. Do you agree with some of these numbers? Do you not? Let me know in the comments. Anthony in the chat before we go to break. Hope you had a good weekend. Do you think the amount of playoff games the last few years, including 3 Super Bowls, finally caught up to the Chiefs? That's why they didn't perform as well against the Eagles last night. If you mean in terms of them just not being prepared and thinking that they were just going to take the field and win this game, yeah, they, like I said, they looked flat coming into the game. They did. But I think also it's just the fact that the Eagles were the better team. The Eagles proved to you last night that they were the much better team. When going into this game, I thought it's going to be even. Because the Chiefs have that championship pedigree. They have that experience. But Eagles got a better team. That's... If you were to look at the sole reason, just look at the simple fact that Eagles were the better team. So, we're going to take our final break now. So when we come back, we are going to put a close on the 2024-2025 NFL season. Just kind of do an overview on it. Just the big moments, things like that happened this year. And, yeah, so for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're just going to talk about the 2024-2025 season, the biggest takeaways from it, an overview of the season. So, I'll be honest, not a year I'm going to look back on and say, wow, that was a memorable, it's one of the years that's going to go up in the rafters for me as the best years of watching football. But, it's not like there weren't great performances, great moments, but or maybe it's just the fact that I don't know. I'm not as I don't know how to put it, but I don't know. It's not one of those years that I'm going to look back on and say, "Wow, that was a memorable year." I guess you could look at a lot of things though from this year, and you could categorize it as a memorable year, or maybe you could say, "Well, you're a Giant fan and you just are." you just can't accept the fact that the Eagles won the Super Bowl this year. But look, I've seen the Eagles win before. I think you look at the biggest things I could look at is the running backs. The seasons that the running backs had. If there's one major takeaway from this season, it is what the running backs were able to accomplish this year. Specifically Saquon Barkley, of course. 2,000 yards. He goes from one team to another team in his division, in the same division, and then ends up winning the Super Bowl. I mean, he's going to be looked at as one of the greatest free agent acquisitions of all time. He helped the Eagles get to the Super Bowl, and then the defense and Jalen Hurts, their performances last night, they propelled them to a Super Bowl championship. And Barkley struggled. I mean, Barkley had 25 carries last night, and he only had, he had just under 60 yards. He was incredible this year. I mean, Derrick Henry, if it wasn't for Saquon, Derrick Henry would be like, wow, I mean, he was the best this year. I mean, and he's in his 30s now. And I think also you look at the rookie quarterbacks. I mean, there's things you could look at. I mean, I'm a 2010s guy when it comes to, football, because that was just the best era of football. But anyways, the rookie quarterbacks, the rookie draft class that we got this year was a solid draft class. And we're going to see how these guys continue to progress throughout their careers. But, because we didn't see all of them. J.J. McCarthy didn't play at all. Michael Penix didn't play until the end of the year. So, we're going to get to see, how they progress. And this could turn into one of the better draft classes. Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels, playing for two teams that I didn't have expectations for going into the year. I really didn't. I thought they were going to, they were still in rebuild mode, but they are ahead of schedule now, and they're only going to get better. Jaden Daniels, he took his team all the way to a championship game. We got to see the Washington Commanders in the championship game this year. Did we think that was going to happen? No. They beat the one-seeded Lions on the road. I mean, we'll see how this draft class continues to grow. But they're heading in the right direction. I mean, look at Drake May. I think, the Patriots, they got cap space. They're going to surround him with more talent. I like the Vrabel hiring. The Broncos are only going to get better. The Commanders, you figure, are only going to get better. The Falcons, I mean, we'll see. Penix over the course of a full season. J.J. McCarthy coming back next year. How are the Vikings going to handle, the quarterback position? And that's the other thing, too. Guys getting second chances. Another guy, Sam Darnold, getting a second chance. And he plays for a team that wins 14 games this season. And Vikings, I love their roster going into the year, but I just didn't know how was the quarterback position going to play. How was that going to shape out? And Sam Darnold played really well this year. Unfortunately, the season did not end the way Vikings fans are hoping. They got bounced out pretty quickly in the playoffs. But Sam Darnold had a great year. And, we'll see if he stays with the Vikings, if he goes elsewhere. I mean, I think he should stay with the Vikings because, if he goes anywhere else, he's not going to put up the same numbers that he did this year. He's just not. But, yeah, that's another thing you could look at. Guys getting a second chance. I mean, even Russell Wilson getting a second chance. Yeah, I guess a second chance, a third chance. Yeah, second chance. I mean, this is now the 13 that he's played for, but I guess second chance, post Broncos when it just, wasn't looking great. I mean, I thought Russell Wilson played well this year with the Steelers, but, then again, it didn't end great. The Steelers ended up losing 5 straight. You get to the playoff, including the playoff game against the Ravens, where the Ravens were just clearly better. And now it doesn't look like he's coming back. He's going to be going elsewhere. Who's going to give him another chance? And also, take a look at, the performances from some of the receivers this year. Jamar Chase, Triple Crown. And he kind of got disrespected in, the voting for the NFL honors. If it wasn't for Saquon Barkley, I mean, you'd probably give it to Jamar Chase for Offensive Player of the Year. Jamar Chase was great. And, before the year started, there was all the stuff with his contract, and they still got to figure that out, obviously. But, it didn't start off great with that. And you thought, could he hold out? Didn't end up holding out. He ended up having his best season. And, with that and Joe Burrow and Trey Hendrickson leading the league in sacks, Bengals didn't even make the playoffs. Didn't even make it. You could also take a look at how the New York teams fared this year and just how New York football was an embarrassment this year. It was, in different ways. For the Jets, a lot of people were saying that they were going, including myself, were saying that, listen, Rodgers is back. This is going to be a playoff team. I had them winning the division, but I was not picking. There were people picking them to go to the Super Bowl. I'm like, I am not doing that. Maybe they get to the playoffs and they win a playoff game, but they are not going to a Super Bowl. Not only that, they were not good. They were not good. They were not well coached. Rodgers struggled during the year. Did finish the season on a higher note, but it was not a good year. And then for the Giants, they ended up winning 3 games. They ended up cutting ties with Daniel Jones. It was a forgettable year. We'll talk about this too, but just the year for the Giant fan, that was rough. Did not have a good season. You had an opportunity to see Eli Manning make the Hall of Fame. Doesn't get in this year. And then you see Saquon Barkley win a Super Bowl. People are saying it. This is probably the worst season in franchise history for the Giants. On the year that they were honoring 100 seasons, their 100th season, and this is the year that we got to see. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And also, we'll talk about, we talked about New York football being disappointing, but, there were other teams from last year that made the playoffs and just how it was a disappointing year. The 49ers, I didn't expect them to be this bad, but a lot of that had to do with injuries. And are they going to be able to bounce back next year? We'll see. And, the veteran quarterback, there's question marks there. Matthew Stafford's going to continue playing. Is it going to be in L.A., which I think it will be? You got Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins. These guys could be on the move. And where are they going to end up? Kirk Cousins, he started off good, and then he fell off. Now, I didn't bring this up because I know I talked about the Falcons last week. I talked about him last week. He did talk about how in the Saints game, he got hit in the elbow, I think he said, and he ended up, dealing with an injury for a while. So that also played a role in, his play declining. But I think it was a combination of a few things. It was just a guy that lost confidence. You're coming back from, the other injury, the Achilles. But, yeah, it's just, it was not a good finish for him, and then he ended up getting benched. But, yeah, look, I don't think this was like I said, this is a year for me personally that's going to go up in the rafters. It depends on who you talk to. If you're an Eagles fan, you're putting this in the rafters because of just, your team won the Super Bowl, and, after a 2-2 start, you only lost 1 game. You had a great offseason. But I don't know. It has a lot to do with me being very nostalgic to the 2010s and just, there's a lot of special years during that time. So, yeah, another year in the books. Look, there's going to be some times, we're doing shows here where, there's just not going to be that much going on. But you got free agency coming up in the coming weeks, well, next month. The schedule is going to come out at some point, the draft. There could be trades that happen. There will be things to talk about. But we are going to take a look back on how wrong I was with certain predictions, things like that. We'll figure it out. But we are now officially in the off season, and now I am in baseball mode. Obviously, we're not going to talk about baseball on here, but it's baseball season now. and I'm ready for that. Pitchers and catchers are reporting, so I'm in Yankee mode now, more specifically. But it is going to be a long off season again. I remember last off season that there were days where I'm just like, man, I don't know what to talk about today. But we figured it out, and we're going to do the same thing this time around. There's going to be, a lot of things to cover with the things I just brought up. But another NFL season is in the books. Hey, maybe we'll talk about the US. I almost said the XFL, then the USFL, the UFL. The UFL's coming up, so we could talk about that. I really didn't talk about it last year. I think the only topic I really did was talk about Jake Bates. Wow, and I bring up the UFL and my camera turns off. So that goes to show you guys that, it's time to wrap it up here. So that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Get their perspectives on the Super Bowl and other stuff across the world of sports as well. We'll be back again tomorrow. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video. And until next time, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to